Expedition 33 is quite obscure with its party members and mechanics, so today I'm going to clear up that obscurity, cover some of the best skills, party combos, and things that'll help you in the late game of Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Let's go! No story spoilers will be found in this video, but I am going to talk about all the core party members. Just a minor warning for you expeditioners out there. We'll start with the one that joins first, that is Lune. Lune fits a healer and sort of an AoE damage dealing role. All her skills deal fire, ice, lightning, or earth damage, and she doesn't have any skills that are based off of her weapon damage, unlike a lot of the other party members. What this means for Lune is that you do need to be mindful of enemy resistances and make sure you're using the right elemental types and not getting your attacks absorbed or anything like that. But the core mechanic of her setup is stains. Now, when you use an ability with Lune, you'll see on the ability in the top right hand corner that there will be a certain color or a couple of colors. This is a stain that you will gain after using that ability. Now, there are 4 different types of stains based on the 4 different element types that you can do, plus there is also a light stain which can take the place of any of the other stains. The reason you want to generate these stains is because you can then consume them with other attacks to empower your next skill. So the flow here in some regard is to use a skill to generate a particular stain and then use that stain with another skill to add additional effects. A lot of Lune's skills are high AP as well, so make sure you are using some sort of action point generation with Lune. Now, as you get further in the game, having some of these skills that only do, say, one element or something like that are a little bit less valuable, but there are 2 that you want to use in the early game and then all the way through. First being Rebirth and second Revitalization. Rebirth is a revive skill that can be used to revive allies, which is absolutely crucial just all the way through the game. And then Revitalization will allow you to do a bit of AoE healing if you get that perfect timing on the skills as well. And it also generates a light stain. So I found I leaned on these quite a lot throughout my playthrough. And then in terms of overall damage and effects for Lune, I've really enjoyed Elemental Trick. Deals low single target ice, fire, lightning, and earth damage on 4 hits. And critical hits generate the corresponding stain. Definitely want to make sure you have high critical hit chance with Lune, but also this is a great way to see what the enemy resistances are by doing ice, fire, lightning, and earth all in that one attack for only 3 AP. Now, if you get super lucky or you just have all of the elemental stains, you can use Elemental Genesis to deal extreme damage to all enemies 8 times. Each hit deals damage in a random element and it will consume all of your stains, but you do have to have one of each type or a light stain. If you're struggling to get one of each stains, Mayhem is a fantastic option for only 3 AP to consume all the stains you have to deal high elemental damage to the target, and it can also break if you are consuming 4 stains. That is often the main 3 attacks that I have used, like skills attacks, along with Wildfire because it deals medium fire damage to all enemies and it applies 3 burn stacks, which is great synergy with Maelle and Sciel because they can both use burn stacks to do different things with their skills. So I do find that with Lune having some sort of a way to apply burn, whether that be Immolation, that first skill she gets, or with Wildfire because it hits all enemies, definitely beneficial for her overall setup. Maelle is absolutely one of the highest damage dealing characters in the game because of her stances, which is absolutely the mechanic that you want to lean into with her. Now, not including her stanceless mode, just like the default, she has 3 stances, being defenseless, where she takes less damage and will generate 1 AP on a parry or a dodge. She's an offensive stance where she'll still deal more damage, but she'll also take more damage. And the main stance you want to focus on is Virtuo stance. Now, this will increase your damage by 200%. The main kit for Maelle is essentially getting into the Virtuo stance and staying there for as long as possible. Now, you'll notice with all of her skills in the top right hand corner, there is a little symbol that indicates what stance she will enter after using that skill. The main goal here is to figure out the easiest way to enter Virtuo stance and then just stay there as long as possible. The easiest way to do this with Maelle is with Swift Stride. So it deals low single target physical damage on 1 hit, but it switches you to the Virtuo stance if the target is burning. There are plenty of ways to make targets burn. We just talked about a way with Lune. You can also make targets burn just by using your free aim attacks if you have the right pick dose, which I've always done with Maelle as well, or even using skills like Spark that she has, or Rain of Fire, preferably Rain of Fire once you have leveled up a bit to unlock it, as it does a bit more damage and can apply burn stacks as well while in defensive stance, which is typically what you'll revert to after a Virtuo stance. Now, once you're in Virtuo stance, you want to use that flexibility with something like the Fluet Fury. This deals high single target physical damage 3 times. And if you're in Virtuo stance, you'll stay in that stance as well. Now, after you have used this attack, in often cases, you won't have enough AP to then use it again. So having something like Mezzo Forte to reapply your current stance and give yourself 2 to 4 AP is a great way to keep yourself in Virtuo stance or any other stance that maybe you do want to stay into. A couple of other skills that I really like for Maelle, one being Payback. This deals very high single target physical damage, and the AP cost being 9 initially is reduced by the amount of parries you did in the previous turn. In the later stages of the game, you're going to face a ton of enemies that'll do massive attack chains. You can essentially get this attack off very cheaply by having this Payback active as one of your skills. And then Combustion is also a fantastic skill for Maelle because it will consume 10 stacks of burn, which you'll have a ton of burn stacks on enemies by using Maelle's kit. So you'll then be able to consume those stacks and deal increased damage. And a more situational one that you'll want to run for certain encounters is Breaking Rules. It deals slow single target physical damage for 2 hits, but it destroys all targets' shields and you gain 1 AP per shield destroyed. But really it's about that destroying of shields, and if the target is defenseless, it also allows you to play a second turn and you can apply defenses on another character, break those shields, get a second turn. It's just a fantastic skill all around, but only on those specific encounters where enemies do have shields. Sciel is a little bit of a confusing character in terms of her kit because she has kind of 2 different mechanics, whereas most of the others have like one. One of them is Foretell, which is a unique status effect that only Sciel can apply to enemies. You do want to use this effect quite often, and you can tell when it is applied on enemies because they will have that card and then a certain amount of numbers in there, which is the amount of stacks of that they have. The main effect for all of her skills is either applying Foretell or consuming Foretell for certain effects or something like that. And then the second part of her mechanic is the Sun and the Moon charges. All of her attacks, you'll see in the top right corner, will either have a picture of a sun or a moon. This will indicate whether it will generate a sun or a moon charge for you. Now, once you have a sun and a moon charge, you'll then enter a twilight state for 2 turns where your damage is increased by the number of sun and moon charges you had when you entered that state, and your foretells will be doubled, the amount you can apply, as well as the max foretell on a target will also be doubled. So with Sciel, the main thing you want to focus on is getting as many sun or moon stacks up as you possibly can, and then use the other type. Say if you've been stacking sun, once you've got a fair few stacks, then use a moon attack. This will enter your twilight state where you'll have a larger amount of damage increase because you've got a larger amount of charges, and then you'll want to dump a lot of her higher damage dealing attacks. Something like Twilight Dance is a good one because this will keep you in to the twilight state an extra turn as well, especially if you're in a high state of twilight. But typically with twilight, you only have the 2 turns. Now on that first turn, you want to apply as many stacks of foretell as you possibly can. So using something like the focused foretell, which is like her basic attack, this will apply 2 stacks of foretell and then additional 3 if they don't actually have any, but that's obviously doubled while in twilight. Searing Bond is fantastic. I love this skill. So it deals medium single target dark damage. It applies 5 of foretell. However, if there are other targets that are bleeding, it'll also deal that same damage and apply that foretell to them. It's a great combo with that earlier skill we were talking about with Lune Wildfire. Spectral Sweep is also another one, especially if you have a high amount of critical hit chance with Sciel. Now this will apply foretell per hit and then an extra 1 for all critical hits. And then you want to consume those stacks on your second turn of Twilight, something like Sealed Fate to deal high single target damage 5 to 7 times, and it will consume 1 foretell to deal 200% more damage. Grim Harvest will heal your allies for 30% plus more if you've got those extra foretell stacks, which is another good one. Twilight Dance is also great just for dealing maximum amount of damage on her turns. Another good foretell skill is Card Weaver, which will propagate the foretell to all the enemies and allow you to play a second turn. Just another good way to keep those sun stacks generating and getting that foretell going up. Verso's kit is all based around perfection and never making a mistake, basically, in dodging and parrying. So what you'll see as Verso is that rank on the right hand side. S is the maximum amount that this grade can go up, and for each tier of rank you go up, it will increase the amount of damage that Verso will actually do. The main way that you will increase his rank is by hitting an enemy. Each hit counts as like 1 progression, and you'll notice that perfection will go up by 1 when you hit an enemy. So the main thing you want to focus on with Verso is skills and free aim, etc., that deal multiple hits because it will increase that perfection and get you up those ranks a little bit faster. You also want to make sure that you parry or dodge basically every attack that comes to Verso, because when you do get hit, you will lose a rank. You won't lose perfection, but you lose a rank. And if you do parry them, you actually gain perfection as well. So definitely beneficial to be perfect with Verso. That's like the whole part of his kit. Some things to focus on is like multi-hit skills and using free aim. If you've got extra AP with Verso, free aim is fantastic to generate you perfection, to get you into that next rank for a next like skill, or even just like using multi-hit skills are also beneficial. So when you're thinking about his kit, focus on that. Now the best skills here are all reflective of that. First being Paradigm Shift. This deals low physical damage, but it gives you 1 to 3 AP, and when you're C rank, it gives you an extra AP. This only costs 1 AP as well. What I like to do here is use free aim at the start of a combat encounter when you're in D rank. Get yourself into C rank. Typically you'll have like 1 or 2 AP left. Then use Paradigm Shift for those extra 3 hits. You get that extra AP, and then on the next turn, you can really start dumping some of that AP into some of Verso's more heavy hitting attacks. Assault Zero is a starting skill for Verso, but also beneficial because after you've been in that C rank with Paradigm Shift, then you go into B. This has increased damage when you're in that B rank as well, and can generate additional perfection on critical hits. So you want to make sure you got those critical hits coming too. Light Holder is fantastic to deal medium single target light damage 5 times, and on completion you gain a rank. Typically you want to use this at A rank to then gain yourself just immediately into that S rank, and if you are at A rank you'll get an extra 2 AP as well, so it's perfect to then dump a high damaging attack when you're in S rank on that next turn, as long as you don't get hit. Strike Storm is good, but it's very hard to get the effect right, as you have to hit on those perfect X's or QTEs in order to use it, so be mindful of that, but it does fantastic single target damage 5 times and generates you a ton of perfection if you can perfect it. I am also a big fan of follow-up. Now when you're at S rank, this only costs 2 AP, typically it costs 5. But with Verso, when you're parrying a lot and using his kit right, you're going to have a ton of extra AP that you can use. I like to use that extra AP in free aim, because with the right pick dose, you can apply burning or bark or other effects on the targets and deal a solid amount of damage with Verso, hit those weak points. You can use all of that AP up to 5 and then use follow-up, which the damage is increased for each free aim shot you've used this turn up to 10 times. That is a substantial increase, and it's fantastic to get all of those hits off, and it's a good way to get that extra AP used and then deal a solid amount of damage as an attack. And then as a bit of like a closing attack for Verso, Phantom Stars is the one you want to focus on. This deals extreme light damage to all enemies 5 times. It can break, and at S rank it only costs 5 rather than 9. Monoco is the most unique character in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. His skills aren't gained from a typical skill tree. In order to get skills, you will need to hunt down some feat, and those feat are obtained by defeating enemies with Monoco in your party. You'll notice if a enemy has feat that Monoco wants, because there'll be a little Monoco icon next to them when you're in that combat encounter, and this is only obtained when he's in your party. So make sure that for encounters you're fighting new enemies, or even going back to previous areas and just like refighting some enemy types to get some more of his skills when you're trying to level him up, is beneficial. But the main part of his mechanic is actually the bestial wheel. So anytime you start a turn with Monoco, you'll be somewhere along this wheel, and every skill you use, you will notice on the top right of that skill, it will have like a number and like a little circle thing. That indicates how far along that wheel it will push you when you use that skill. Each level of the mask on the bestial wheel will potentially add effects to certain skills. So you'll notice with all the skills, it will say like X mask, and you'll deal an additional effect if you are in that mask at the time you use it. A good tip for Monoco is to use a weapon that specifically starts you in a certain mask, whereas if you don't have that, you'll just be started somewhere randomly. By doing this, this will ensure that you will know exactly what that first skill you're going to use is, and the perfect example of this is one of his best skills being Abyss Wind. So if you start in the agile stance, you can then use this attack for free. It's a low damage attack, which is fine, but it does allow you to play a second turn. So you can then immediately follow up with a second attack and then use some other of the abilities. A lot of Monoco's ability also either break or apply a lot of break. Some something like Ramansu's Bonk, which is a dark attack that can break, but in Agile Basket fills up 20% of the target's break bar. Stellact Punches is another one that deals high break damage, has increased damage in the heavy mask. Monsieur's Vendage is good to deal high physical damage, and it'll hit 3 times, and it also can break, does increase damage when in the balance mask. Brawler Bash is for the caster mask to increase its damage, but also does high physical damage. And then I'd like to have an ability to enter the Almighty mask, like Bernoisse's Mortar, which changes you to the Almighty mask if the target is marked. It does increase damage in the caster mask as well. Now, the Almighty mask will always apply the mask effect for whatever skill you use. Monoco only has a couple of skills that specifically are looking for the Almighty mask, but these ones deal extreme amount of damage typically, or have very powerful effects, like this fire skill that deals extreme fire to all enemies for 3 hits. It also applies 3 stacks of burning, perfect synergies with the earlier burn synergies we were talking about earlier, and the Almighty mask does make it do increased damage. Progressing with Monoco is really a game of patience and actually going out and fighting a lot of those enemies with Monoco in your party while he's quite weaker, to then gain those more powerful skills that make him significantly stronger, and especially figuring out the flow of his bestial wheel and paying attention to the skills that you are using and seeing where on the wheel you're going to start, and then where, when you use a skill, it's going to push you into that next category, so then you can flow your attacks really cleanly with Monoco is something to focus on. But that's all I have for all of the party members in Expedition 33. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Any tips you have for party members, any really good skills that I have missed. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.